The LCG conversion on the ECTO continues. Hey folks, welcome back. We are here again doing a little bit more work and probably the last bit of work we need to do on the Element ECTO LCG conversion. So if you've not seen the previous videos, I'm in the process of converting a Element Enduro ECTO into an LCG rig with a GCRC Caiman Chassis. So far, so good. It's gone pretty well so far. There's a couple of little niggles that we've had along the way, but nothing major, mostly just down to the sort of trial and error that you have to do with a custom build. Other than that, it's all gone really well. I did mention in a previous video that I was thinking about getting some 100mm Desert Lizards for the back. I've done that, I've put them on. I think that's sitting better now. It's still a little bit kind of squat. It's a bit lower at the back than I really want it, so I might have to stiffen that suspension up a little bit, maybe put one of the other spring sets in there. But we'll see how it goes. We'll worry about that when we come to doing some actual running and trial it out then. I've decided I'm going to keep the ECTO body and just trim it down a bit for two reasons. The first reason is I like the ECTO, right? I really liked the ECTO. The only reason I'm doing this is because I wanted another LCG chassis, and I thought, well, I could just chop and change the body backwards and forwards between the Gatekeeper and the ECTO. But I really like them as two separate trucks, actually. So what I'm decided to do is use the ECTO body on this still. Don't think it'll need a huge amount of trimming. Probably only just the front wheel arches and around the front of the chassis. And then we should be golden. I've already trimmed the interior a bit so it sits down lower on the transmission. I'm pleased with how that's gone. It's nice. It was nice and simple. It means I can keep the look because I really liked the way I got the ECTO looking, so I can keep the look. It'll just sit a bit lower and hopefully be a bit more awesome. And the second reason that I wanted to reuse the ECTO body is everything's getting so damn expensive. I mean, even the sort of cheap comp style bodies now are £40 or £50 a time, and then you're going to chop half of them away anyway. I thought, well, I'd rather do it this way, and then if I decide further down the line that I want to use the ECTO body on the Gatekeeper, at that point I'll invest in a new shell. So anyway, let's get cracking, let's get stuck in. Hopefully this won't be too long a video. So today, the last thing I need to do really, apart from trimming the body down, which I won't do on video because I'm terrible at it, frankly, and you know, you can learn how to do that from better people than me. So apart from trimming the body down, all I really need to do now is install the servo onto the axle. You'll know if you have an ECTO already that is normally a chassis mounted servo. With this particular kit, there is no chassis mounting option, at least not one that I'm aware of. So I'm going servo on axle, and it's really not a complicated job. I did the same conversion on my G-Speed rig a few weeks back, and frankly I wish I'd done it sooner because the performance improvement was phenomenal. So here's what we need. Obviously we need the servo. Now this is currently just a sort of cheap kind of Amazon servo, or actually it might have been a Banggood special, this one. But it's fine, it's held up so far, and you know, if I want to replace it further down the line with something a bit faster and a bit stronger, I'll do that. We need a new steering link because the existing steering link, which is this one, is too long. Not by a huge amount, but it is too long. So what I'm doing for that is I'm using a piece of M4 threaded rod cut to the length that I need, which is 62mm. It's quite helpful actually that recently Element decided to release the Sandero SE, which is a servo on axle setup, and with that, of course, that meant that now they've basically done the measuring for us. So you know, this 62mm link, it worked beautifully on the G-Speed, so I'm going to use the same one again. So that's a piece of threaded rod cut down to 62mm. That will take the normal rod ends, and that should be pretty much spot on. I might need to tweak it a little bit, but not a lot if my experience from the other conversion is anything to go by. Then of course I need a servo and axle mount. Now, like I said in my last video, I got this from RRC Customs here in the UK. It's a nice carbon fibre servo on axle. mount. Quite simply, it screws onto the armature, or the, I forget what that's called. Anyway, the existing axle basically clamps into place with that on the front, these two kind of clamping pieces on the back, screw through the middle, and then your servo sits inside there like so, and you've got your servo on axle. Really simple, really straightforward process. Like so many things, it didn't come with any hardware, so you will need some screws as well. I've got two sets of screws. They are 10mm and I think 12mm. Yeah, so they're four 10mm screws with nylock nuts, and 4 12mm screws. The 10mm are the ones that hold the servo into the mount, and then the 12s are the ones that hold the mount onto the axle. So quite simply, I'm just going to get cracking with that. It's a really simple job, this. I've already done a sort of loose test fit. I don't think there's going to be any problems with it at all. It's not fouling on anything. Everything clears as it should do. So I'm really pleased about that, as you perhaps expect. So I'm just putting these on, finger tight so far. They're not biting down into the nylon yet, and then we'll just tighten them up, making sure that that's sitting square in there. So we'll go corner to corner. Obviously, because these are nylock nuts, I'm not putting any thread lock on them. There we go, that's it, stage one done. It's a really simple job, this. Next one is obviously a little bit more tricky because there's a bit of a balancing act to play getting the thing in place. I'm not sure which is the best way around to do it, whether you put the mount on first then put the servo on, or vice versa. Obviously I've picked doing it this way. I may regret it, I may not, we will see. So I don't think this is going to come over particularly well on camera. I'll do it upside down, that might help. So this bit is a little bit fiddly, and you could do with 2 pairs of hands really, particularly if, like me, you're doing it upside down. I wouldn't recommend that. I would suggest you do it the normal right way up, but you know, actually this should be doable. So there we go. So obviously you've got the 4 screws attaching it to the truss. Truss was the word I was looking for earlier, I think. And then the 4 screws attaching the servo onto the mount. And that is good and solid, not going anywhere. So the next job obviously is connect those 2 things, servo to the steering. Should be pretty straightforward. So of course what we want to do is make sure the servo's centered. So I'm going to need to power this up. If you saw my review about this chassis, you'll see I marked it down a point for the battery strap, and that's why. Strap it down really tight and it'll still just slide out pretty easily. I've got a rubberized one that I need to put in. It's pretty slow, but it will do. Right, so it is not quite centered, so I'll put that off and see if it can be mounted any more centrally than it already is. No, it seems like the next tooth round is just off centre in the other direction, so we're going to have to use a bit of trim on that. So next we just need to make up our steering rod. Get my trusty shock pliers, because it just makes life so much easier. And I tend to just use a 1.5mm screwdriver for this. It just works really nicely. And the overall length we're looking for here, to match this Sandero SE steering link length is 92.25 millimeters. Now unfortunately the batteries in my calipers are gone, so I'm not going to be able to get the quarter spot on, but I should be able to get pretty close. There we go. So I reckon that'll be pretty good. And now it's just a case of attaching the two things together. And once I'm happy that this is all in and working as I want it to, I'll put some thread lock on there, because that is a metal servo arm, obviously with a metal screw going into it. There is actually a little bit more clearance here, so that's not going to foul the diff cover anyway, which is great. There we go. And then obviously next position is to get the one onto there. And that, as they say, is that. We have got some working steering. You can see it. It's not the best servo in the world, but it does the job. So I've got to set the end points up there. You can see that moving on one side and not on the other. So if we go past that point there, you can see it pulling the servo. And there we go, I'm pretty happy with that. So there we go, so I've got a pretty decent steering angle now. I mean, that's going to be broadly 45 degrees-ish, if not a little bit more. Right, so let's have a quick look at this. So what I've done so far, I've just notched a bit out of the front of the body shell so I can get it to the right level, and then I can trim it. And I've also just chopped a bit out. Poor driver and co-pilot have lost a shoulder each, and then there's a bit of a hole in there now. And that slots down over the transmission. But other than that, this body actually fits really nicely. There we go. It sits super nice and low, so I'm going to have to trim it a little bit, because we're definitely going to get some rubbing there, and 100% going to get some there. Right, so that's pretty much done. We are in a position now where I think all I've got to do is just sort of get the body fitted properly. It's fitted pretty well, but it does need trimming down, as you've already seen. Once I've done that, I think we're good to go, ready to give it a try. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this pans out. The wheelbase has worked out to be almost exactly the same as my existing G-Speed rig, and that's pretty close to the original ECTO wheelbase as well. So in terms of wheelbase, it's not that different. However, obviously it is a little bit different now, so it's got 4-link suspension on the back instead of the trailing arms. It's got 4-link suspension and a servo on axle system at the front. It's on that LCG chassis, so it's quite a lot of change. It's not really much of an ECTO anymore, but it still looks like one, and that's the main thing. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this performs in comparison to the G-Speed now. So obviously originally this ECTO, when it was in its fairly stock form, was very similar in performance to my G-Speed as I originally built it. Now I was quite surprised and almost a little bit annoyed by that fact, because I put a lot of effort into that G-Speed, and then the Element comes out and it's kind of a ready to run that's nearly almost as good for a lot less money. But as I've mentioned a few times, I've made a few upgrades recently to the G-Speed, and it is a lot better than it was. It's much more performant, much more capable. So it will be really interesting to see if this now is still as close as it was, or if there's now a bit of a gap. Or hey, it might even be better now. You know, different geometry, all that sort of stuff. So, can't wait. Really looking forward to finding out. So I will come back with another video, like I say, with some running footage and some opinions of that. I'm not sure when that'll be, probably a couple of weeks. So if you haven't subscribed and hit the notification bell already, make sure you do that, and then you'll get a notification when that video does come out. Obviously, if you're still here at this point in the video, I can only assume you liked it, so please do give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel if you do those sorts of things. And drop any comments in the comment section below. Any questions, I will try and answer them if you have them. That's going to do it for today. We'll see you soon on the next one.